Dates are very important in using Roam. We often use the daily notes page as a starting point. And it's interesting to note that dates in Roam basically use ordinal numbers, which is kind of unusual. And actually, as you work with Roam, you see that it's aware of dates, but it's not really aware of dates. And so we kind of have to conform to the way Roam handles dates rather than it conforming to the way you might personally want to use dates. But once you've made that adaptation, it's actually pretty easy to work with. Now, Roam 42 includes kind of a nice date natural language processor, which makes it easy to insert dates. So here I am in my block and I'm typing some text. And let's say I want to put in today's date. I can just say today and then press Alt Shift D. That invokes the date natural language processor. And it's going to scan the block and find anything that looks like a date. So I put in today's date. I can say tomorrow, Alt Shift D. I can say in 1 week. So there's in 2 weeks. I can also say 2 weeks ago. As you can see, it even goes backwards in time. The natural language processor is pretty flexible, but it has its limitations. You have to experiment. But it's very useful to understand what it's doing by just trying it here. You can even do, of course, just typing in dates as you might like, and then use the natural language processor to resolve those. Now, why that's important is that the Roam 42 SmartBlocks feature uses the natural language processor for many things. So let's take a look at that. We're going to build a very simple SmartBlock here. We'll call it 0 date testing. And this is a very common command that we use in SmartBlocks, date, and it supports natural language processing. So I'm going to say today. Now what happens when I run this? Of course, it pops in today. Now I'm going to go to the next day, which is the 29th. And I'm going to run that as well. And of course, it puts in today's date, which makes sense. The command was today, but it's the 29th. There are times, though, when you're building workflows where you want to use the date of the daily notes page as the reference point for all the commands that you're going to do. Let's just demonstrate something before I go and show how you can time travel. So actually ran that. So to make this a little more clear, today, tomorrow, in 1 week. So let's run that down here. So no surprise, today is the 28th, tomorrow is the 29th, 1 week from now is the 4th of January. And again, if I go to a different day page, for example, let's jump out to the 30th, run that SmartBlock. No surprise, all the same dates, 28th, 29th, 4th. So returning to our SmartBlock here, here's how we do time travel. We are going to use the DATEBASIS command. So this tells Roam 42 what is the context for how dates are calculated. And there's a few options here. DATEBASIS for date commands, DNP for the daily page date, or an NLP expression. So let's use an NLP expression and we'll say Feb 1. So what we're telling this SmartBlock is that it's going to use February 1st as the reference point. And watch what happens when we run it. So today is February 1st, and then tomorrow is February 2nd, and 1 week from now is February 8th. Again, it's using this date basis here for all of its calculations. So let's go a little further. We're going to say .db, and we'll use the input function. what is the start date? Question mark. And we will say no block output because we don't actually want to put this block out. We just want to get some information. Let's run this now. What is the start date? Let's say March 15th. So what's happening is we're grabbing March 15th. We're putting it into a variable here. Actually, didn't do anything because I have to use that variable. Sorry, let's do that. So we're going to say, we're going to do an input to get information from the user, put it into a variable called DB, and now pass that to DATEBASIS. DATEBASIS is a little bit of an unusual command. It's really not designed to be used with other commands. That's why I'm doing it in two separate blocks. But you can use the get variable command. So if we run that now, again, March 15th. So as you see, it's using March 15th now. That's today. Tomorrow will be March 16th. And 1 week. Let's run that again. You don't have to be too fancy. You can even just abbreviate stuff. So now we said November 1st. But in this case, the date processing engine thought you were referring to previous November, which might be what you wanted, but let's do that as, there we go. So now it used 2021. Okay, so that's time machine mode. You provide a context through DATEBASIS, and all the date calculations are figured out from that. Actually, let me show you one other. 1 week ago. So let's run this here. Make sure it works. Yep, 1 week ago. Great, it's working. Now, I have a template or a workflow that I use for my daily notes page, and I run it each morning. Now, instead of providing the date based on today, because sometimes I want to apply that workflow to daily notes pages in the future, DATEBASIS accepts DNP, which stands for Daily Notes Page. So what you're basically telling it to do is, if I'm on a daily notes page, use the date of the daily notes page as the reference point. If you're not in a daily notes page, it automatically defaults back to today. So if I run this here, today is the 28th, the 29th, 1 week from now is the 4th, 1 week ago was December 21st. That makes sense. Let us jump ahead to January 1st. And so now the daily notes page is January 1st. That should be our reference point when we run that. So as you can see, January 1st is today. Tomorrow is the 2nd. 1 week from now is the 8th. A week ago was the 25th. Again, let's hop out to a different date. January 15th. Run the same. And as you can see, it's using, again, the daily notes page date as its reference point. Let's create a test page here. What happens now if I run it here? We're not on a daily notes page. It's going to use today's date. There's no date to give it context. So that's one of the ways that you can create a workflow for your daily notes page and even run it in the future and get all the appropriate dates as you would like. This is also useful if you're doing projects. So imagine you have a project that starts on a specific date. So that's the context date. And maybe you have a action that should happen a week before a project starts and then a week after. Well, you just use the NLP features to control the dates. So if you go up to the Rome 42 public graph, just as a point of reference, you have the SmartBlock Builder's Guide. Under the date and time commands, you see a description of how DATEBASIS works. It also discusses which of the commands will work with that, and a brief description of time mode. That's all I have to say about time machine mode.